Does your birth order really shape your personality? Or is it just something we say to justify why our siblings drive us crazy? Think about it. The oldest is always responsible, the youngest gets away with everything, and the middle child, well, people barely remember they exist. But is any of this actually true? Or are we just repeating family myths? Today, we're finding out with someone who actually studies this. I'm joined by Dr. Emily Carter, a developmental psychologist who specializes in family dynamics. Welcome, Dr. Carter.
Thank you. And I should warn you, I'm here to defend parents everywhere, but I might expose a few family secrets along the way.
Let's start with the big question. Is birth order real science, or is it just an easy excuse people use during family arguments?
It's definitely more than just an excuse, but it's also not a strict rule book. Birth order is a framework psychologists use to understand patterns in family dynamics.
So it's not predicting personalities, it's observing behaviour.
Exactly. Researchers look at how children respond to their position in the family. For example, when a first child suddenly has to share attention, or when a younger child grows up watching older siblings.
And that changes how they act?
Yes, children adapt to their environment. Birth order influences what kind of attention they receive, what's expected of them, and how much responsibility or freedom they're given.
So the family environment matters more than the label?
Very much so. Birth order doesn't determine who you become, but it can influence how you learn to interact with authority, competition, and cooperation.
Can you give an example?
Sure. Firstborns often grow up with higher expectations and more structure. Middle children learn to negotiate and compromise. Younger children observe and imitate. Only children experience more adult interaction. These experiences shape habits, not destiny.
So that means stereotypes aren't completely wrong, but they're incomplete.
Exactly. They're simplified versions of complex developmental processes.
Okay, but I still have to ask, can I blame everything on my siblings?
Not everything. Birth order explains tendencies, not excuses. It helps with understanding, not avoiding responsibility.
So awareness instead of blame.
That's the goal. When we understand our patterns, we gain the ability to change them.
And that's probably the healthiest takeaway.
I'd say so.
Let's talk about firstborns. They're often described as responsible, organized, and a little bossy. Fair?
Fair. Firstborns usually receive a lot of attention and expectations early on, which can make them achievement-oriented.
So that explains why they act like mini adults at such a young age.
Exactly. They learn early that being dependable brings approval.
And pressure.
A lot of pressure.
Now, middle children. Are they really the forgotten ones, or is that just a stereotype we keep repeating?
Many middle children genuinely feel overlooked, even when parents don't intend to ignore them. It's not about neglect, it's about attention being divided.
So it's not that parents forget them, it just feels that way.
Exactly. They're sandwiched between an older sibling who has more responsibility and a younger one who often gets more protection.
So they're thinking, okay, where do I fit in here?
Right, and that question shapes a lot of their behaviour.
So do they end up fighting harder for attention?
Some do, others take a different path. They learn to adapt. Middle children are often flexible, diplomatic, and very good at reading the room.
Like emotional chameleons.
That's a great way to describe it. They learn how to negotiate, compromise, and keep the peace.
Which sounds like a skill set most adults don't figure out until much later in life.
Exactly. Many middle children become strong listeners and natural mediators because they've been practicing those skills since childhood.
But there's a downside, right?
Yes, sometimes they struggle with feeling invisible or undervalued, especially if they don't feel clearly defined within the family.
So on the outside they're easygoing, but on the inside they're thinking, does anyone actually notice me?
That's often the case.
So basically, emotional intelligence built through survival.
That's a very accurate way to put it.
Let's move on to the youngest child. Are they really spoiled, or are they just misunderstood?
Usually a little of both. By the time the youngest arrives, parents are often more relaxed, more experienced, and honestly, more tired.
So the rules are still there, but they're a lot softer.
Exactly. Parents worry less about every little thing, and that creates a very different environment.
And older siblings step in too, right? They help, protect, and sometimes do everything for them.
That's right. The youngest often grows up surrounded by helpers, which teaches them early how to interact, negotiate, and charm.
So instead of learning responsibility first, they learn people skills.
Yes, youngest children often develop strong social awareness, creativity, and a willingness to take risks.
And they're incredibly good at talking their way out of trouble.
That's not manipulation. That's persuasion.
But let's be fair, there's a downside too, right?
There can be. Some youngest children struggle with boundaries or responsibility if they're overly protected.
So confidence on one side, accountability on the other.
Exactly. When balanced well, though, youngest children can be incredibly resilient and socially skilled.
Now let's talk about only children. They're often labeled as lonely, spoiled, or bad at sharing. Is that fair?
Not really. Those ideas are outdated. Only children often spend more time with adults, which shapes them in a different way.
In what sense?
They tend to be independent, articulate, and comfortable in adult conversations from a young age.
So they grow up faster socially.
In many ways, yes. They also learn how to entertain themselves and manage their time alone.
That sounds like a strength, but also a lot of pressure.
It can be. Only children may feel intense pressure to meet expectations because all of the attention is focused on them.
So there's nowhere to hide.
Exactly. They can be sensitive to criticism and perfectionistic, especially if success is heavily emphasized.
So confident on the outside, but carrying pressure internally.
That's a very accurate description.
Let me push back a little here. Aren't we giving birth order too much power over how people see themselves?
Yes, if we treat it as destiny. No, if we see it as context.
So it's not a life sentence?
Not at all. It's more like a starting point.
Because I've met very responsible youngest children and very carefree firstborns.
Exactly. Personality is shaped by many factors: parenting style, culture, life experiences, and individual temperament.
So being the youngest isn't a permanent excuse to avoid responsibility.
Unfortunately, that excuse doesn't work in adulthood.
And being the oldest doesn't mean you have to carry everyone forever.
Exactly. Awareness gives you choice.
So what's the main takeaway for our listeners?
Birth order can influence tendencies, but it doesn't define who you are. Awareness helps growth. Labels don't.
I love that. So whether you're the responsible one, the peacemaker, the risk-taker, or the independent only child, there's nothing wrong with you.
Exactly. Every role comes with strengths and challenges, and none of them are better or worse than the others.
And probably at least one sibling who still annoys you. Thanks for listening. If this episode reminded you of your family, share it and be ready for the debate that follows.